This is a Lip Media podcast.
Hello, Lamely. Welcome to the first full episode of Me, I Am a Memoir, the meaning of Mariah Carey. I am Fab, Adam Richard. This is Posh, Phillip Lee Curtis, and together we are the elusive Sham 2.
It's still funny.
No, it's never not funny. We will be going through Mariah Carey's memoir, The Meaning of Mariah Carey, and discovering the meaning of Mariah Carey. As we go along. Now, trigger warning coming up in this episode, there will be a discussion of family violence. Mm-hmm. So that could be distressing. Also, suicidal ideation could make itself apparent at any point, as it does in the book. So,
and that's not just us.
That's not just, yeah. We've read the book and it's driven us to the edge. No. So just if any of those things upset you, you can always call Lifeline 13 11 14 if you are in Australia, or contact Beyond Blue or any of the mental health advisory places in the countries where you live. We don't know them all. You'll have to Google it. I'm sorry.
Don't have a list on it. Sorry.
Yeah. Now, every episode so far of our bonus episodes, before we got to this, the first main one.
Official.
It's official. We've been doing a bit of me moments, the Mariah news, so to speak. So shall we move on into it?
We shall. Me moments. It's time. Not only is it time for us to finally start our deep dive into the meaning of Mariah Carey, but it's also time to get festive.
It is.
Mariah has officially announced that Christmas is on its way, meaning we can legally crack out her 2 Christmas albums and listen to them on repeat every day without fear of Mariah arrest.
I love that it's a legal situation.
Oh, yes. It's very important, darling. Now, Mariah has also decided against becoming a ballot counter in the US election.
I know.
And sadly...
I did see that someone wanted to count the ballots in Las Vegas. It's like, they're slow enough in Nevada. The last thing you want is Mariah having to put on a full face to do the ballot counting.
And then getting to 39 and having to start counting again. Everything's 12. And sadly, the meaning of Mariah Carey was not elected the President of the United States.
I know.
But I do have it on good authority that she will be leading the Secret Service.
Excellent.
So.
I can't wait to see her talking into her sleeve and chasing a car down the street.
But it's
in
the
heels.
book as well. It's the book.
She'll be dressed like she's in Honey, in the Honey film clip, where she's a proper Secret Service agent.
On the what is it, on the water, the jet skis?
Yes.
Chasing them down. Now, Craig David has posted a video of him singing along to Always Be My Baby, and Mariah has pretended to know him. Clearly, that was just Mariah being kind, leading with kindness, as she often does. And lastly, sorry, I think Fab's gone.
You are evil.
And lastly, Mariah's children tried to scare her on Halloween, and now they're up for adoption. So you can pick yourself up one of Mimi's dem babies anytime this week.
Damn kids.
Just they will scare you.
I'm scared of them already.
And that is it for Me Moments this week.
Nice and quick. It's so much briefer now that we've got other things to talk about.
Exactly. My list is just getting longer. As I said before recording, I am now Carrie Bickmore.
Yes, you are doing the headlines.
The gist.
Well, getting into the gist, we are covering 3 chapters this week. Or sections. I don't know what we're calling them. First is An Intention, where Mariah starts her inner child therapy. The next one along is Existence, where Mariah meets Maureen, or Mariah-ine, as we've been calling her.
Yes, that's how I wrote it.
And finds out she can sing. And then our probably most controversial chapter we'll be dealing with, Close My Eyes, where Mariah experiences the horror of family violence. So that is what is coming up in today's episode.
Bring me on down.
All right, it's time to dig into it. Have you got your big Mariah-shaped shovel?
Is it the shovel part, like the bottom part that's Mariah-shaped, or is it the stick as well?
It's the whole thing.
The whole thing. Skinny legend.
Skinny legend, deep digging.
It has a wig on. A shovel with a wig.
Shovel with a wig.
That's the new joke. Now, of course...
Sorry.
It's just going to be us laughing for an hour and a half.
I know. We're dealing with some very serious topics this week, so we're going to have to really get over ourselves.
And if anyone's the authority on that, it's us.
Yeah.
Now, we have finally cracked into it.
Yes.
Part 1, Wayward Child. First chapter, An Intention.
An intention.
Now, I love that this is literal. Like,
Yes.
she's giving us the reason why she's writing the book.
Yeah. I like
And that's
that.
all-
It's
Yeah.
it's kind of I mean, this is the thing with memoir from my university studies of writing my memoir fragment for creative nonfiction. Is that you kind of, you can't just go, oh, here's a bunch of things I remember. You kind of have to go into it with an intention. And, this is basically the first, if you were writing a 2,500 word essay, this would be paragraph 1. But she's got a whole book to fill, so let's make it a chapter.
Yeah, absolutely. It's only 2 pages, but it's a whole chapter.
It is a whole chapter of 2 pages.
Now, of course, I listened to the audiobook this week, and Adam read.
I did read text. How was the speaking?
Yeah, I've got notes. Now, what I should say is obviously the intention really for Mariah was introducing us to little Mariah.
Yes.
And what she said, this is a quote, "My intention was to keep her safe, but perhaps I have only succeeded in keeping her prisoner." Now, in the audiobook, I wanted...
You wanted prisoner, didn't you?
Prisoner. I wanted her to break out straight into I don't want to be a prisoner.
I don't want to be a prisoner without your love.
But I will say, I do love that already the self-references are just in every sentence.
Oh, everything. Everything is... the meaning of Mariah Carey is Mariah Carey. I think we're going to find
Absolutely.
right at the end.
To the point when she started talking about little Mariah sort of... We got glimpses of her early in the career, and she just started listing off the music video. Yeah. What do you call what happens? Like, I was on a swing and I was on a roller coaster. And it's like, oh,
get
yes.
that though. Like, she's been so sort of, over the top and hands on with her career and the images and the visual stuff. And like, if you... Point in fact is watching the making of the beautiful film clip where she's obviously being told what to do by a director and then going, not that.
I don't think so. She doesn't know that director.
So, yeah, I kind of get the fact that she's looking back over her career basically at this point and going, oh, that was the inner child trying to get out.
Yeah.
That was the inner child trying to get out. That was the inner child trying to get out. And she has suppressed it all this time. And yeah, I mean, I'm pretty much feeling, I know I've said this a lot on the way through, but I feel like that she's done nothing but inner child work.
Yeah, just every day playing with blocks.
The only therapy she's done. Which maybe she needed to do to have kids. Maybe, we know
Maybe,
she went
yeah.
through a couple of miscarriages, and maybe that was something she's like, ugh, why is this so distressing to me? And
Yeah.
maybe this is the wonderful product we've got on the other side of it.
I'm just imagining her walking into a therapist's office, sitting down, and the therapist saying, "What would you like to talk about today, Mariah?" "My childhood." And she's like, "Mariah, we have done this every day for 19 years.
I love the idea
Can we please get past 12?
of Mariah being carefully arranged on her therapist's couch.
She arrives before the therapist.
Yeah, the therapist comes into Mariah's office.
Yeah.
I'm
And
having
the
my
lighting
therapist
comes
flown
down.
in.
Yeah. It's Oprah.
I'm still upset that Oprah's never done therapy.
Oh my God.
It's really distressing me.
She's the world's therapist.
She is the world's therapist.
Who could therapize Oprah?
Therapize?
No one. Is now.
Maybe Dr. Phil, but that's about it.
Oh, I don't know about that.
I don't know about that either.
Now, another quote that I've got from an intention is, "Millions of people know her, but have never known her," which is really just a universal reminder that we don't know her.
I don't know her. Well, I mean, maybe this book is Mariah finally reconciling herself with the fact that I don't know her about her own inner child.
That's true. Can you imagine? That's maybe what's been going on this whole time.
Yes.
Can we talk about your inner child? I don't know her.
I don't know her.
I did make a little note of, because Mariah was saying that she felt like she'd had, a heavy blanket and the weight was pulling down on her. So I'm now just suggesting that anyone at home with a weighted blanket, just double check that little Mariah's not in there, because you don't want to squish her.
Have you got a weighted blanket? I don't get the weighted blanket.
No, it's
just
for
get a
cuddles,
heavier blanket.
It was just 8 blankets.
Yeah. I would
go into the linen cupboard. But no, I'm now terrified that anytime I have a slightly heavier blanket, that perhaps there is a little Mariah in it.
I think
and
it's
that's actually,
a metaphor,
I'm kind of okay with that.
Posh. I don't think she really is under a lot of blankets.
Not literal. Oh, that might be our image for the week. One thing that did happen in the audiobook, there's a moment in which Mariah sort of, takes control and says, "I'm a grown woman now." But she almost sighs at the end of the sentence. Like, "I'm a grown woman now." Exhausting. I don't want to be a grown woman.
It's very hard being a grown woman. It's exhausting.
I agree. Yes. Daily, I'm reminded of that.
You are neither grown nor a woman.
I'm going to tell that to my therapist.
Your therapist?
She's Oprah. I'm going to call Harpo Studios. And if not Oprah, her receptionist, Gail.
Excellent. It's not the receptionist.
Sorry, Stedman. I forget.
Stedman's not the receptionist.
Gail is the weekend receptionist.
Oh,
Stedman's Monday to Friday. But yes, and towards the end of An Intention, Mariah is basically saying it's all about giving little Mariah a voice.
Yes.
Which is lovely.
Yes. But also, I think the other thing is she's warning us that the little Mariah's voice is... Little Mariah's going to say some things that no one wants to hear. Certainly not people close to her. So that is... also a terrifying thing, because that's one of the things of any kind of therapy is what comes out of you, the things that you've been sitting on not saying for a very long time, sometimes can be distressing to a lot of people.
Yeah, and so I think sometimes people in themselves don't even realize it, so it comes out and they go, "Oh shit, I shouldn't have looked under that blanket." No. But I think that wraps up An Intention. I feel like it is what it says on the packet.
Yeah, it's basically the run-up.
Yes. Before the pole vault that is very short. Now into chapter 2, Existence. Now the chapter starts by quoting Outside, but once again... Mariah did not sing it. Mariah, where is this audio experience you promised me? Where are the singings?
Oh, does she say it?
I know.
Does she even...
She did say it.
Oh, okay.
Yes. But, sing it, Mariah. Sang.
Sang.
I did go back and listen to it as she gets shouty at the end. I'm like, that would have been heaven.
I did listen to it myself.
Now, one of the things, like this chapter does dive a little deeper. And one of the things that Mariah sort of stated was that she didn't feel worthy of actually existing, of being alive. Yeah. And she had yet to find what she was meant to do in the music.
And that is a confronting thing for a little kid to feel. That is like feeling like you're not worthy of life itself. Yeah. And you know what that kind of this, because I always felt there was a weird disconnect between the way Mariah used to talk about her mother in interviews and stuff. Like, you know, she was an amazing opera singer, she was amazing this, amazing that. And then there were the lyrics of the song from Glitter. Now, I know that's a character talking about her mother.
Look, it's a fine line, isn't it?
Yeah, like there's a couple of songs from Glitter where you go, oh, I think this might be, you know, more real than about Mariah's real life than about the character. Like Reflections, like this whole paragraph felt like the lyrical content of the song Reflections from Glitter. So yeah.
I mean, she may mention it in the Glitter chapter as well.
She
may be like, this is definitely about my mother. Now, speaking of, we are introduced to Mother Patricia. And Father Alfred Roy. Mm-hmm. And Mariah describes Mum as having...
And the ex-brother and ex-sister.
Oh, yeah, we're getting there. There's some audiobook specialties in that one. Now, of course, you know, for anyone who... I'm sure everyone's reading, but she describes her mother as having pale skin and straight hair, and her father is having deeper skin and kinkier hair. Now, the use of kinkier, I did have a little giggle. Because when someone says dad...
somewhere revolting.
When someone says dad and kinky in the same sentence, I'm like, okay. But yes, then we're introduced to... We're not calling them exes yet.
No.
She says, and I have to say it like the audiobook. So, my sister Alison and... Brother Morgan.
Oh, she sighs.
Yes.
You get a big sigh.
Before there's a sigh.
Well,
and
that is some foreshadowing for the next chapter.
Oh, yes. And she basically describes them as having energy that blocked light. That they had little room for whimsy and fantasy, which would have been a perfect time to hit us with some fantasy, Mariah, just quietly.
Look, I'm not big on whimsy myself, so look, I can understand. Alison and Morgan on some level.
Alison and Morgan. Now, she does start to say, once she sort of introduced us, that she felt like an intruder in her family. Now, I was wondering, is that something you have ever felt?
Oh, yeah. Like, reading this chapter, I started to remember I used to believe I was... that I was an alien, like in...
I wrote that down too.
Guardians of the Galaxy.
Oh, well, not that second part.
No, I mean, yes. I'm just like, that wasn't what I thought at the time. But, you know, in Guardians of the Galaxy, he's an alien that's been dumped on Earth.
Sure.
And then is rescued by his space people. But yeah, I had that. I honestly thought that there's no way that I was related to these people. I'm fabulous. Who's this mess in my house?
Yeah.
And did you have a similar experience?
Yeah, I think I grew up in quite a big family, but also quite a sort of like a separated family.
Yep.
So there was lots of step siblings and halves and this and that. And not that we ever saw each other that way, but once in a while I'd be reminded, like school holidays, my sisters who I lived with would go and visit their dad because we had a different dad.
Yep.
And it was always on my birthday because I'm in September, school holidays. And so it was like a reminder that, I don't get to come.
Yeah.
You know, like I'm not quite the same.
Yeah.
And on top of that, you know, being a gay kid and not knowing it yet and being super creative, like even now as an adult, I've gone really far into the sort of creative land in my career. And sometimes like I'll go just to a family occasion or even just my straight friends who've got kids, you know, and the sort of picket fence life that people, you know, aspire to, I guess. And I walk in, I'm like, I'm not quite fitting in here, am I? And it's not necessarily a bad thing, but there are just moments in which you go, I don't know if I belong.
Yeah.
But I think it's quite common for anyone who's had some kind of difference.
I don't think it's even about that. I think everyone feels it. I think every single person on this earth feels separate from their family. Because, like, when you're a child, like, they go out of their way to make you feel like you're part of the family and you're protected and all that kind of thing for the most part. But, you know, we are individuals on this earth, all of us. We're not actually connected to each other except for, a few moments at night time when you're having cuddles.
Not lately. Go on.
But, like we're not physically connected to each other. We're not psychic as much as the late night television commercials would have us believe. So we are all individuals and we are all separate. And I think part of that feeling as a child is, that realization that, I'm not a part of my parents. I'm not a part of my siblings. I'm not, I am separate to everyone. And I think one of the things about, creativity is that we spend the rest of our lives exploring things like that. Whereas everyone else, I guess, just gets on with their life and occasionally will intersect with that kind of thing. Maybe if they're reading a book or they're watching a TV show or something has kind of stirred something in them emotionally. But for the most part, it's not what they spend all of their time digging up and raking over. But I think all of us on some level do feel a separation from the rest of the world, and it's just that we're individuals, and that's not a bad thing. It's just a hard thing to come to terms with. Listen to me being serious.
No. All I'm thinking of, like, I just miss being little when, you'd get, like, carried to bed, you'd fall asleep on the couch or something, and it's like, why doesn't that happen anymore?
Because you weigh
why
over 100
giant
kilos,
people?
honey. There's no one can lift you.
A forklift could. Now, one of the things, of course, that Mariah sort of starts to talk about is that music kind of becomes her thing. And I think a lot of people will relate to that those kind of things, your music and or whatever it is that you sort of get enjoyment out of, they almost become home.
Yeah.
Because when I move around, like one of the first things I do is make sure I've got my music.
Yeah.
And that's what gives me that familiar feeling, even if I'm in a different place, a different country, a different state, whatever it is, I've got my music, and that brings me that kind of comfort, I suppose. And I definitely think that that's the case with Mimi. And she starts talking about how her soft singing actually was how she would calm her anxiety.
Yeah.
And I am thinking, is that the reason why after she belts in a song, there's just always a quick come down?
Yeah, there's a little,
like, I went huge
moment. It's like,
I'd better
had a little exhausting moment.
Yes.
I do love Mariah who says to her, when you sing, it sounds like there are instruments with you. There's music all around your voice.
Yes. We love Mariah.
Not say that.
So I've rewritten that sentence.
Yes.
Of how Mariah describes it. Now it's a collaboration with Mariah herself. Just see if you can spot where it diverts.
Yes.
All right. So she stopped suddenly, frozen in place. She listened in silence, standing very still. Finally, she said in a clear and steady voice. The sun momentarily disappeared behind a cloud and only reappeared once she made her statement. It hailed glitter and my hair shone like a Pantene commercial. I handed her a mic so she could say it again, louder. I booked an auditorium and sold tickets. It sold out in 5 minutes. I mean, I don't know where that went from reality to fantasy.
Look, maybe this girl did say something like that, because it's obviously stuck with her. It's a pivotal moment in her life, but it's it's pretty full on. Like, how old are they meant to be?
I know. 3.5. I don't know. But we love Mariah. Thank you, Mariah. You are the reason we're all here today.
And I do like that she's taken it on board. That she's gone, you know what, maybe I'm, emphasizing too much what she said. And so she's decided that God was speaking through this little girl, which is why she was suddenly so eloquent. But I do like the idea that Mariah believes that her voice is full of instruments and can be musical. And given how much we've, listened to her over the years, I'm like, well, I would have trouble arguing with her.
Yeah, absolutely. She's got to prove it to us over and over and over again.
And that moment where she says, my voice could make other people feel something magical and transformative. I'm like, oh, damn you, Mariah, you do make me feel like that. How dare you be self-aware?
And that, I know, who knew?
I know.
And that's kind of where she says that her purpose came from,
Yeah.
that it was that feeling, giving people that feeling, herself having that feeling. And so thanks to Mariah has a meaning.
Yes.
That's it. Book
Oh,
closed.
we finished. We found the meaning.
Yeah.
All right. I need to go on to the next chapter, which is good because it's distressing.
Yeah. And I think we're there. I think that covers
Closed my
existence.
eyes. Which is a song, and there's no lyrics. I thought we'd get lyrics to Close My Eyes.
No. We get a different song at the end.
Yes, we
which
do.
she also doesn't sing. How dare she?
How dare she give
Now,
us a
yes,
different song.
this chapter does open pretty full on with the violence between her father and her brother.
Yeah, and obviously her brother's quite old at this point, like, well, a teenager.
I was going to say, yeah, I sort of had a little Google, and if Mariah was 4, he was around 14.
Yeah.
There's no definitive date. But even that stood out to me as it's one of those things where, you know, to Mariah, he would have been big.
Yeah.
But he was 14. Like, it's,
Yeah,
you know.
but he's obviously
It's
a
scary.
big kid, like, you know, like physically powerful. But yeah, it's but even when she says something like this particular fight, it's like, oh, there's more
This
than
was,
one,
yeah.
obviously.
Yeah.
And having come from a house where there was violence, it was a shocking thing for me. I was like, oh yeah, here we go. I've been there. This is terrifying. And you know, there's something she talks about with the police coming over and not feeling safe, which is obviously a race thing. Which I have obviously with no experience of, but I do have the experience of not feeling safe around the police. My dad was mates with bikies.
Oh, good.
And other criminal elements. Like at one point, I remember there was, you know, I was told, like I was admiring someone's jacket. Like I was maybe 6 or 7 years old, and I was admiring someone's jacket and was told, "Oh, don't touch that because if you put it on, he'll have to kill you." And I'm like, "Okay." What? Why? Where have you taken me? This is not an okay situation.
No, that's terrifying.
Yeah. So, but yeah, the violence. It's. But you know what? It's kind of impressionistic. Like there's no. You know, it's all about like the tornado of fists and the shouting. Yeah. There's no kind of specific description or depiction of, you know, individual moments of violence. It's just like an impression of violence, and while it is confronting and it is terrifying, I feel like she's still in a place where it's not. She can't really dig into the details of it because it's probably still quite distressing.
Yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, it's pretty full on. Like calling it a war zone at one point.
Yeah. And just saying that she didn't know whether the police were there to help or hurt, you know. Yeah. All of that. And just even like the thing, I was very lucky. I didn't grow up in a house of violence. But the thing that stood out to me was the guns.
Yeah.
You know, as a 4-year-old, like I don't like to see guns now. Like,
no. But when the police are in your house,
so
they have guns. I mean,
yeah, I freak
in Australia.
when I see them at Flinders Street Station. No,
that's.
I see them like in people's holsters, as in the police officers' holsters
the train
at Flinders
police
Street Station, and I
is
back up a
weird.
little bit.
I'm not okay with that.
It might just be the regular police out the front. I don't think it's the ones on the tracks.
No, but they have guns too, don't they?
Anyway, I don't know. I just try to stay away. Now, one of the things that was a little bit lighter in this chapter was we met Nana Reese, or as I call her, Della, and
Touched by an angel.
Yeah,
she was a famous gospel singer
before
before she was in Touched by an Angel.
Yeah, she's everything. She was in Picket Fences too.
She was. I love Nana Reese. She's great.
And isn't she great? She does provide Mariah a little bit of love and support in some of those times. But one thing that in the audiobook really stood out, Mariah talks about having moved 13 times.
Yeah.
And she says it was 13 occasions to be labelled unworthy and discarded, obviously trying to fit in and all of that. But the passion in her voice as she goes 13 times, 13 times, 13 times, it just gets like, I'm like, oh, she's feeling that.
Yeah.
There was definitely some stuff going on there. The quote that she attributed to her cousin Lavinia about you kids had all the burdens of being black but none of the benefits. Now, of course, Adam and I, neither of us are people of colour.
No.
So we can't speak from personal experience, but the idea of being stuck in the middle is, I think, a lot of what she's talking about. I suppose there's the white privilege side of things, but then I know also within families of colour, if you're not dark enough, you're this, you're that, and to be experiencing that at 4.
Yeah. Well, that's something...
Even within her own family.
I listened to a great podcast. I was watching this great show called Lovecraft Country, which is an HBO...
That's a made-up show. That's a made-up show.
It's not. It's real. It's a horror show. But they had this associated podcast, and the two women in that... in the first, it's amazing. I've learned so much from listening to the podcast and watching the show. But the two women in that are talking about, the idea of passing and lighter coloured skin versus darker coloured skin, and just the political ideas behind it and who you cast in a role in a show. It was a very, very incredible thing. So because, neither of us are qualified or capable to talk about these things, I will say go and listen to the Lovecraft Country Radio podcast if you want to hear people talking quite intensely about race and how important it is to see it depicted in all of its different shades on screen, and what it is like to live that experience, because neither of us can tell you about that.
And also read the meaning of Mariah Carey.
Well, obviously, yes. Mariah can tell us. But, if you want another opinion, if you want a second...
Not that others matter, only Mariah's. Now, one of the things that was more of a fun thing that kind of stood out to me was Mariah's mentioning of the rocking couch, which was the broken couch.
Yes.
That they kind of turned it around and made it something fun and familiar. Yeah. I think that is such a kid thing to do, because, the things you pay attention to as a child... everything you pay attention to everything, and I do remember things like that where you'd be excited to see that broken couch or whatever it was, or that thing that didn't work but you pretended it worked. Even the little rocking horses outside of the supermarket, you are like, that's a real horse. It doesn't have any ears anymore,
and you have to put 20 cents in it to make it go, but still it's a real
horse. Doesn't. Yeah. And I just thought that was just, again, that whimsy that she was talking about. It's like, okay, that there was still little moments of that, but she sort of says that Delarice told her not to be scared, and generally gave her comfort and hope. And then a bright light shone from above her head, and that she said she was sent from God. Then it turned out that cousin Lavinia was actually Roma Downey, and and now wearing Touched by an Angel.
It's not Touched by an Angel.
Isn't it? Isn't it, though?
Look, it's not Touched by an Angel, and Mariah Aureen is not Joan of Arcadia. It's not...
I mean, that could be the meaning. We might get to the end and say, and thus wraps up the series finale of Touched by an Angel.
Andrew, Angel of Death.
Yeah, the Angel of Death. Now, at the very end of the chapter, she does mention Through the Rain, which again didn't sing. But what I found interesting was, I don't know if this song was purposefully written about her brother and this time, but just connecting it to how she said her brother's moods were like the weather. And the part that she says, you can make it through the rain. I was like, okay, I see what you're doing there, Mariah. You're marrying things up. Whether it was intentional or she just thought, oh, actually, that makes sense. Let's put that section in. Wasn't super clear. But one thing that and this is just my revolting mind, seeing the lyrics written out, because normally, you just sing the song and you don't think about it. And the way it's sung, you don't notice these things, but seeing it written down as there's nothing you can't face made me think of, what is it you can't face from The Sound of Music? There's nothing you can't face. Yeah, there's nothing you can't face.
But she says, she doesn't say can't, she says can't.
No, but because I read in an Australian accent. Because that's what I mean when she sings it. It's like, can't face, but that's not how I
know.
When you see it written down,
when you
like,
read it out loud in English,
can't
yes,
face.
it's confronting.
Oh.
I've had, weirdly, this song in my head for the last 4 weeks, and it will not go away.
Really?
Yeah. And I keep listening to it, and it's weirdly unsatisfying to listen to. And I'm going to explain that a bit later in one of our other sections.
Okay. Oh, all right.
But
shall we?
Yeah, that lyric, and should they tell you you'll never pull through, feels like, you know, she's been told more than twice. You know, you're not up to it. You can't make it, kind of thing. And that's also reflected in the lyrics to Mariah's theme, Can't Take That Away. It feels like she's been told more than once that, you know, you're not good enough and you'll never make a success of whatever you're doing, which is something.
And especially Through the Rain at the time that was written and recorded. And...
But that was something I kind of grew up with as well. Like, ever since I was 5 years old, I always said I wanted to be a writer. Like you were saying with music, for me it was books. Like I had books everywhere.
Yeah.
I always had books. I taught myself to read before I went to school. My parents neither of them finished school.
They're still there.
You know, they're like
any day.
Like Nelson from The Simpsons. But so as I became more and more educated and was, you know, like at the age of 5, wanted to be a writer, that never stopped. And, you know, I've got my book out now, which you can see.
Next to Mariah, Big W.
At the Big W. Thank you, Posh.
Which I promised.
But it's, you know, one thing I was constantly told as a kid and has made it really hard for me as an adult is you'll need something to fall back on. Like, as if you're really not good enough. And it's like, I have been more than good enough for a very long time. Like, my marks at school were ridiculous. You know, and but I still, because being constantly told that, you constantly feel like, oh, maybe I do need to have something to fall back on. It's like, I'm making a living out of this. I have made a living out of this most of my life, but I still like, here I am 30 years in to doing this for a living. And I'm like, oh, maybe I do need to have something to fall back on. Should I learn a trade?
Yeah. And I 100% get that. Like, for me, I think graphic design, which is what I've done for about 10 years, has kind of been the backup in a way, because I thought it was a clever way to, through my graphic design, I've been able to, you know, do my own performance flyers and all that sort of stuff, but also I do a bit of copywriting because I love a bit of writing as well, and get to be creative every day. But it's an office job. But as I've sort of more pushed towards the performing side and putting together an album, which COVID has slowed down, but it's happening. And I think people often, I'll talk about it and it's almost like they're like, oh, that's nice. And I'm like, actually, this is the thing that gives me so much more than anything else. And okay, maybe I will have to do the design a bit longer to pay for it, because that's, you know, I'm not going to walk into recording like company and they're just going to be like, yeah, here's a contract. But for me, success isn't about, oh, he's the number one artist in the world. It's about writing, you know, and singing the songs I want to sing, getting it out there, that people, whoever want to hear it, whoever can hear it, do. Yeah. But it's more just about me going, I did that thing. Like, it doesn't have to be, you know, the Grammy Award winning. Yeah. As nice as that would be. I mean, I don't want to say no if you listen to the Grammy committee.
I'm not turning you down.
No.
I'm just saying I'm fine without.
But I think a lot of it is people's perception of what success is.
Yeah.
Oh, I haven't heard of them, therefore they're not successful. And I think of people, someone like Nick Cave is someone who sticks out to me, as a lot of people know who he is, but he's not, you know, number one every week or anything, but he has had a really consistent career. He's got his people, he writes what he wants to write, he works in different areas as well, like even in film and all sorts. So it's like, that's the kind of person I want to be. You know, kind of artist I want to be. And I think it's the same as what you've said. You just do it and it becomes a success in itself because you're just following what you want to do.
Yeah.
So people should shut up. That's the meaning of Posh.
The meaning of Posh.
People should shut up.
The meaning of Posh.
Now, should we head into a little of Mariah Meatiness?
Mariah Meatiness. Well, I feel like we've been fairly meaty already, but yes.
Mariah Meatiness. What we're going to do for each chapter, so this time we'll be scoring all 3 chapters. We will be giving the chapters a score from number 1 to infinity.
Yes, of course.
Now, so that we don't end up with random numbers like 475, and it makes no sense, what we'll do is a regular sort of scoring from 1 to 10, but if it's really extra,
infinity.
We go to infinity. So let's start with an intention. What score did you give from number 1 to infinity?
Well, look, I'm going to end up giving 10 to everything. But as far as like setting a tone for the book, letting us know what is to come, that we're going to get basically the inner child's, perspective on the career of Mariah Carey as her meaning. Definitely an 8 minimum.
Okay.
Yeah.
See, I went for a 7.
Oh.
But I think I'm being a little cautious because I don't know what's to come.
Yes, that's true.
So I thought if I start too high, or what's going to happen. I gave it a 7 because I thought it's a good start at setting the tone, but we weren't really into the juiciness yet,
But it was very, it's very much a statement of intent, which is, why it's called the intention,
yes.
I guess.
So a 7 from me, an 8 from Fab.
Are you keeping score on a whiteboard somewhere?
I'm typing it. Existence.
Look, it's very ephemeral, and I don't believe that Mariah Meatiness ever existed. But I do love a lot of the things she's saying. I'm going to give this one a 7. This is a 7 for me.
Oh, there we go. We're swapped. I pushed that to an 8. Because I thought we're starting to lift a little.
Yes.
We're getting a little more Mariah. And now Close My Eyes.
Close My Eyes is very confronting. But like I said, it's impressionistic, the paintings of the violence. It's, there's no horrific detail, which I guess, at the age of 4, what do you remember? You just remember arms sticking out of shirts, banging around, which was an amazing image, I thought. So yeah, I'm going to give this a 9 because it is weighty, it is emotionally impactful, and we get, Nana, the prophetess.
Yes, Nana Dolores. I also gave this one a 9 because I thought, we're not quite getting to the infinity.
No, we haven't got to infinity yet. But
things are happening.
I'm sure there's some infinity in Sing Sing.
Oh, yeah. And, any of the Lamley listening, I will send out a little tweet of some of these scores, and feel free to send us your scores as well. We love to hear from everyone.
But as a Mariah fan, I have to say they're all infinity. I'm just
obviously.
Objective me as a writer is giving them these scores, but Mariah fan, the lamb that I am, says infinity for each one.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, I think it's time for the remix.
Ooh.
The remix. The remix. Now, what if you were Mariah in any of these situations? Is there something you would have done differently?
Well, this is going to be controversial because it's about Through the Rain.
Oh.
And having listened to it a lot. And what I've decided it needs is a full orchestral remix. She doesn't have to go back in and sing it, but I want...
She will.
She will. But I want, the orchestration for Never Too Far from Glitter. Like that big soaring strings, like a big full orchestra. The production on Through the Rain is kind of really minimal. It's quite electronic and there's rain, that's fine. But I want...
And she goes through it.
I want a full orchestra because it is such a big, momentous song. It's got a great key change and it just feels a little bit I don't know, like, I feel like Mariah's doing all of the heavy lifting and the music is just sort of trying to keep up with her.
Yeah.
And this, I know this is technically nothing to do with the book.
It's okay.
But she put the lyrics in there and I've wanted this to change all my life. So if Mariah, if you're listening, can you go back in and re-record the orchestrations? That would be great, just for me.
Yeah.
Because I just think your voice needs, like, it needs more. It needs more support. There you go.
Yeah.
That's what I would say.
So much power. No, I love
It's
that.
a literal remix for the remix.
Yes, yeah. I just want another remix of a Mariah song. Now, my remix would have been that if I were Mariah, as I got older, I would have demanded to see more of Nana Del Reese.
Oh, yeah.
Because she just sounds delightful, and unfortunately, they did sort of go off into their separate directions. I would have been like, no, I need to go to Del Reese's house, Del Reese's Pieces, if you will.
That is a really distressing thing to read because you just go... Because as a kid, the people that you really relate to and link with, you know, when the necessities of your family life are that you need to separate from those kinds of people, it is really hard. Like for us, it was that my alcoholic father was becoming more and more violent and terrifying. And so Mum just cut off all the people that she was friends with because it was just like, well, it's too embarrassing. So we were like, it meant there were no circuit breakers and we were locked inside with him. But no, awful. But it meant, you know, like a lot of our friends, like, because, you know, you make friends at school, but also there's family friends.
Yeah.
And they all started to disappear. And yeah, I totally understand that kind of feeling, like wanting to spend time with someone, but because of the weird necessities of your family, you can't. So yeah.
Yeah. So that was, and the little remix was probably not using the words dad and kinky in the same sentence. Though I know many who have
a different meaning in America.
The meaning of the word kinky. Can take that away. Oh, Mariah's lesson. And now we're on to Can Take That Away, Mariah's lesson. What have we learned from Mariah this week?
What have we learned? I think we've learned that, you know, family violence is terrible and terrifying.
If we didn't already know that.
I think we already knew that. But, you know, I think it's one of those things that, you know, people talk about it a lot, but no one ever thinks of what it looks like to a child.
Yeah.
And seeing it from a child's eyes is... you know, it is a terrifying thing. It's like, here are two people that you love because, like, you're a kid, your love is unconditional, and they are destroying one another, like physically hurting each other, and probably smashing things in the house. Like, you know, some of your favorite stuff gets broken. As a child, it was always my records that were covered in beer. My favorite Shirley Bassey skipped from there on in. But yeah,
it doesn't have the range.
She doesn't have the range
anymore.
Oh no, I've listened to her new song. She can still build.
No, the record itself.
Oh, the record doesn't have the range. No, sorry. No. Shirley Bassey, like, as a complete sidebar, Shirley Bassey is doing Beyonce, and it is primo. Oh. Shirley Bassey sings "I Was Here," and whew. Anyway,
and she was. She still is.
I know, she's in her 80s. But yeah, that's one thing I can take away is remembering that kind of thing is still terrifying for children, even as adults. Yeah. Like, we talk about it a lot. I know it's a big media issue at the moment, but the emotional impact on children going through the rest of their lives is incalculable.
See, I love that you've gone really serious and I go for the joke, and people are going to be like, God, that Posh has no heart. And they would be right. So I learned this week that if I'm having a moment, I should whisper sing a few bars of Mariah, and that will fix everything.
It does, though. I do that. I've been, like I said,
So
I've been
my takeaway.
Well, not so much whisper singing, but I have been singing the key change for Through the Rain just alone in my house, wishing some strings would kick in. They don't in the song.
You just hear them yourself.
I do. I hear like a full lush orchestration for that song in my head.
All I can think of, this is going to be a throwback. There's an episode of Xena where Gabrielle gets drugged. And she gets left in this cave with all these rocks. And she tries to lead them, like a choir.
Oh.
And she hears them. So, like, they literally into the soundtrack build like, oh. And she's like, but then she's telling them off when they haven't nailed it. No, you guys, the Sopranos, you're not doing it properly. And that's how I'm picturing you Through the Rain. No, you strings, not enough. Come more.
Have you watched Dead to Me, the Netflix show?
Yes.
Oh my God. The little kid that screams at everyone at his choir because no one's singing properly.
Yeah.
And then you're like,
that's me.
You're like, why are they so terrible? You're like, oh, he's just a little kid. And then when she's having the conversation with the singing teacher who's had a car accident and can't actually hear, like she's tone deaf now.
Oh, it is a good show.
And you're just like, oh, it makes so much more sense now.
Yeah. I feel like that was me as a dancer. I get very frustrated.
You're not doing the steps properly.
Yes.
1, 2, 3, ball change!
Yeah. Don't ruin my show.
This is my moment.
Yeah. And because I was usually the only boy, I was front row center.
Yeah.
So don't fuck it up. Now, a little section that will come in here and there. We don't have a sting for it because I think it's just better to say it.
Yes.
But it's the I don't know her section.
Was
there anyone you felt we shouldn't know, that Mariah shouldn't know? What do you feel?
Well, I didn't think that until you told me the way she introduced her brother.
Yeah. Morgan.
I think we, as a podcast, don't know Morgan.
No, that was exactly what I said. From what was mentioned in the book and then a quick Google search, I am definitely feeling that Morgan Carey, we don't know her.
We don't know her.
Now, I know, just to clarify, we do know that Morgan is the brother, but everyone's an I don't know her. At the end of the podcast, baby. Almost there, almost home. You could probably say, but you won't because of copyright. So next Mariah Monday, just so all the Lamley know, we will be covering the 2 chapters. There can be miracles. It should be brackets when you believe. / when Christmas comes.
Oh, I'm very excited about those 2 chapters.
We are very excited.
Because, it is now officially MC, Mariah Carey, Merry Christmas Time.
It is.
And I've been able to stop skipping when they turn up in the randomness.
It's true. You can hear those bells.
I'm very excited. I'm very excited about adding a new Christmas album to my repertoire. Every year I get a new Christmas album.
Oh, what are you thinking this year?
Well, Dolly has a new one.
Of course she does.
And she's got one with Kenny, which I don't mind.
Is it just Christmas in the Stream?
Christmas in the Stream. Do you know how hard I go to sing the actual tune and then realise it's copyright?
And then you realise we can't?
Quickly sing something else. In case the crawlers are all over our podcast trying to make us pay for things. But yeah, so that's my. But yeah, of course, I'll be listening to Merry Christmas and Merry Christmas to you.
Yeah, I do believe that there is a Mary J. Blige album called Merry Christmas, which is heaven. But now I need Mary who sang Shackles, Praise You.
Yes.
I need them to release a Christmas album called a Merry Christmas.
A lot of their stuff is already, like, they do a lot of gospel music. So a lot of their stuff is already fairly gaudy. I reckon you could just say it was a Christmas album.
True.
And you'd be fine.
Yeah. It just feels like a missed opportunity, you know?
Yeah. They probably do one. But I do love Mary J. Blige. Like, that's one song I've been listening to constantly. The remix where Mary is telling Mariah that, you know, you're Mariah.
Yeah.
Like, yes,
because Mariah
Mary,
does know her. Mariah knows Mary.
They know each other.
That's a good thing because she's nice to her.
That was one of my favorite. You know those moments where you just have like, we used to have spontaneous Mariah on Twitter.
We still have spontaneous
we do still
Mariah.
Have spontaneous Mariah. When the first time I saw the film clip for No More Drama, the Mary J. Blige song, and Mariah turned it up on one of the TV screens, like singing along to the backing vocals. I'm like, spontaneous Mariah!
I never noticed that.
Oh, you better go and watch it again. She's just one of the faces on the little screens. It's like, oh, Mariah, where'd you come from?
We've done it. We have cracked open the book. Like, we're really into it now.
It's very exciting. So 2 more chapters next week, which...
Yes.
Woo.
Fab will be doing the audiobook next time.
Oh, I get to listen to the book, finally.
You do. But you can go back now and listen to these chapters and hear the size. They're not as big as I probably think they are, but they're in there.
I don't imagine they are, but I know you.
But you'll notice. There's exhaustion in the voice.
More.
And 13.
I'm looking forward to it.
But Lamley, feel free to follow us on all the socials. I am a memoir at Gmail as well. We love to hear from you. We have heard a few bits and pieces. Let me pull up. Gary.
Yes.
Sent us a little message on Facebook saying that I love the show. You guys are heaven. Which we are, and he was also an old Talking Puffy fan.
Oh, well.
So, but yes, wants us to keep going after we finish the book, which the title of the podcast may make that a little difficult, but we'll be here for a while.
We will be here for a while. Rodney also posted on Facebook, I've been listening to the audiobook of Mariah. I love that she sings on it. Oh, I haven't got to that yet. Don't spoil it for me.
Oh, well, she's had so many opportunities and she's yet not taken them, Mariah. What's going on?
Because she's very sensible. She knows when to belt and when to whisper sing.
Yeah.
That's what we've learned. That's our lesson for Mariah this week.
Can take that away.
That's what we're taking away.
But I think that's it. We've done it. Look at us.
All right. Well, see you next week, next Mariah Monday, for another 2 chapters of the meaning of Mariah Carey. Thanks, Posh. Thanks, Lamley.
Thank you. Bye, Lamley.